Development Scrutiny Committee on this lovely Friday morning, the 4th of December. Just to make you all aware, today's meeting will be recorded. Can I welcome any members of the public and the press to today's meeting? Chloe, I don't know if there are any in attendance. Can I kindly ask you to observe the meeting only and not to speak or participate? I would also like to welcome Inspector Claire Morgan from South Wales Police. Thank you very much for taking the time to attend this meeting today. Can I please remind you all to switch your phones to silent for the duration of the meeting? And in addition, can I refer you to the protocols for the remote meeting which have been previously circulated? Namely, your microphones should be switched to mute. And should you wish to ask a question or make a comment, can you please indicate either via the chat function or by raising your electronic hand via the Teams? I will assume that you will all have read the paperwork before us today prior to this meeting, and please only use the chat function to indicate if you wish to speak as an alternative to the electronic hand function or to raise any technical issues you may have. When asking a question, can you please indicate which page number you were referring to and proceed in that way. The first item on the agenda today is to do a roll call. I am Councillor Steve Hunt. I am the chair and I am present. I will now call on Chloe, the Democratic Service Officer, to take this morning's roll call, please. Over to you, Chloe.
Thanks, Chair. So, Councillor Rachel Taylor.
Present.
Councillor Dean Causey.
Present, Emma.
Had apologies from Councillor Chris Jones. Councillor Hugh James.
Present, Chloe.
Also had apologies from Councillor Sheila Penry. Councillor Sean Percy.
Present.
Councillor Saif Rahman.
Present.
Councillor Nigel Hunt. No. Councillor Scott Bamsey.
Yes, present, Chloe.
Councillor Jamie Evans.
Sorry, it's Councillor Hunt here. I think my mic was muted, but I am present.
Thank you. And Councillor Simon Noyle.
Yes, I'm here. Thanks, Chloe.
Cabinet members, Councillor Leanne Jones.
Present.
And Councillor Annette Wingrave.
Present.
And officers, Nicola Pierce.
Apologies from Nicola.
Okay, thank you. Claire Jones.
Present.
Aaron Brannan.
Present.
Apologies from Eleanor Wellington. Bethan Denedy.
Present.
Matthew Rafferty.
Present.
Rebecca Barrett.
Present.
Alison Fisher.
Alison sends apologies.
Sarah Williams.
Present.
And Claire Morgan, Inspector Claire Morgan.
Yes, I'm present, thank you.
Is anyone? No, I think that's everyone, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Chloe. The second item on the agenda today is any declarations of interest. So can you please indicate if you have any, and I'll have Chloe to check, please.
I don't see any, Chair.
Thank you, Chloe. The third item on the agenda today, as discussed in pre-briefing, is a presentation on antisocial behaviour plan, domestic abuse, hate crime and drug abuse. What we have decided today, just for those in attendance and the officers to know, I believe Claire Jones, Eleanor Wellington, Sarah Williams, Alison Fisher, I know you mentioned that there's some might be missing. Bethan Denedy, is it? Matthew Rafferty, Erica Barrett and Claire Morgan. What we intending to do is go through that presentation on each of the items. So I would leave it to those officers and those in attendance to take it who they feel is the most suitable person to give the presentation. So we'll do it in antisocial behaviour plan first, then domestic abuse, then hate crime, and then drug abuse. Because what I want to do is ask members of the scrutiny committee to ask questions as that item finishes, so it stays in line with the topic of item, if that's okay with everybody. So I will hand over now to the team that are presenting this item this morning. And as I said, if you can between yourselves work it out in the way I've mentioned. So antisocial behaviour plan first, and if you can indicate at the end of your presentation you were stopping on that, so I can open it up to questions from members on that particular item. Thank you. So over to whoever's taking this, please. Thanks.
Hi, good morning.
Thank you, Chair. Just it's Claire here, just to kick off by saying this presentation covers some of the work of the Partnership and Community Cohesion team, and specifically, as you've mentioned, the areas outlined. Yeah, and as you've requested, the lead officers will give their presentations in order, and I think Sarah will have the first slide. Chloe, are you able to share the presentation, please?
Yeah, I'll share it now.
Okay, thank you. So while we're doing that, as I said, Eleanor and Alison have sent their apologies, Chair. So I'll be covering Alison's slides, and I can't pretend to be an expert. So the only thing I can promise you, Chair, is that if I don't know the answer, I will come back to you as soon as I can, because I will not know the in-depth operational details, which I'm sure I'll be asked about. And that's the same for members of my team. If they don't know the answer, they will promise to come back to you. So if you go on to the next slide, that just outlines some of the officers who are here today. If we go on to the antisocial behaviour slides now, and Sarah will take us through these slides.
Good morning, members. The antisocial behaviour team, there's 3 of us based in Neath Police Station, for any of you that are not aware, and that's myself for the local authority, my colleague Mark Davis, who works for South Wales Police and covers the antisocial behaviour, and our other colleague Darlene Westlake, who works for Titarian. The main bit of our work this year has been the town centre issues. We've had several partnership meetings, and I know I've met some of you over the period of lockdown to discuss issues in your areas as well. The Neath Town Centre work started approximately June time, when lockdown ended and issues sort of became more apparent. We've had a lot of work around the Ambassador area, but since the meetings have begun, and we've put a lot of partnership work into place, and there's been a definite improvement in activity that was in the town centre. Generally, it was on-street drinking that people were complaining about, and possible drug issues. We've got the next follow-up meeting is going to be Tuesday, the 15th of December. We hope to resolve issues in that meeting because we feel the work has been done, and any further issues will be referred into the police-led problem-solving group from there on. I've had an update from one of the officers in Neath this week, and he said there's been a definite improvement in the work we've done. There's still some issues in the Ambassador, but there's weekly meetings and things are generally dealt with pretty quickly. We've had a slight increase in begging over the last couple of weeks, but that would be a normal thing this time of year with Christmas coming up. There's an Operation Shoe Bill for antisocial behaviour through December for retail crime, and Operation Kilmarnock for any antisocial behaviour, street drinking, sorry. And I think there's some other issues there that are covered in these slides. I haven't actually been involved with the homelessness task and finish group, but I think that work has been fed through issues in the ambassador. On the next slide, partnership meetings. As I said, I have met some of you, I know, with the Port Talbot town centre. We had some issues with on-street drinking there. I met with a few of the councillors and other partners with the BID team in Port Talbot. There was a mobile police station in the town centre until the end of November. I've spoken to the sergeant there in the last couple of days, and he said there's been an improvement. We've got sort of a couple of individuals that are identified, and work is being done to address that. Britain Ferry, the issues in Britain Ferry were generally around poor landlords and issues around the properties. Again, I think that's been dealt with, and some of it is ongoing, but a lot of that work has led to environmental health taking over, because some of the issues are around fly tipping and the poor condition of properties, which they're working with. I can't think of the name. The Landlord Association, sorry, it'll come back to me. Right, the other meeting then was GW logs. That again was a big issue up in Gwauncaeg-Erwin, and the individuals involved, there was a court case last month and there was a successful prosecution against them for poor welfare of animals, and I think they've been they've had I can't think of the word now, sorry, I'm losing it. But they've been stopped from keeping animals now for the next 2 to 4 years, I think it was. There's some work still going on there because some other issues have arisen recently. So we will be working with the local councillor in the area to address those. The next slide then, again, is partnership meetings with Wormworks. That is ongoing, and I know Hugh I've spoken to a couple of times on this issue. I've contacted NRW a couple of times this week. They're due back in court on Monday. Part of the notice that was served on them was to clear the site first of all for the building internally. That work has been done. They now they've yet to secure the site, which is the entrances into the building, and that's something we're pushing on because we're concerned that as is now clear that there's a case it could be used for dumping again, but not only that, there's some rumours circulating about raves, so it's important that that is secured as soon as possible. The Tieback Workmen's Club is another empty property that we've been aware of for some time. We're waiting on NRW to arrange a meeting, and there'll be partnership work carried out on that to ensure that is dealt with effectively. The next slide, youth disengagement. I know I've spoken to members in various wards over the last couple of months about different issues. As far as youth reporting, there's very little that's coming through to us of behavioural issues with young people through the 101 number that if somebody makes a call about problems with youth, it then feeds up into our team, but there's very little coming through on that at the moment. We are next year going to be carrying out a piece of work with the Youth Justice team and the Youth Service, along with officers in South Wales Police. We'll look at gaps and where we think particular pieces of work need to be carried out and what we can do to support that. But if anybody wants to speak to us or any suggestions or of areas that you've got of concern, then please let us know. Right, the last slide then for myself is the street vulnerable Marek. The Street Fund of Americas was started in November 2018, and to address issues in the town centre at that time. There's 58 people have come through the forum. We're currently, as of this month, addressing 12 people that are on the list. We've got a really good relationship with all the partners that attend, and I know that if there's any issues, I was in Neath myself on Tuesday. There was one person that was no longer on the list, but I saw sitting in the doorway by Poundland, and I've contacted Bukada, and they're going to have a chat and see what they can do, you know, with the outreach worker to support her. And I've also checked with Housing Options, and they'll see if they can contact her and see what work they can do, or you know, what support they can offer to help her. I think that's it from me then. I don't know, did you say you were taking questions now, Steve? Or
Yes, thank you for that, Sarah. If it's the end of the antisocial behaviour, that's what I intend to do. But before I hand over to members, I know Claire has her hand up, Claire Jones. Before I come to you, Claire, as well, can I make members aware that Inspector Claire Morgan is having difficulties at the police station with the technology, and she has asked me to let members know if they have questions relating to any item or topic for her, to put them into the chat room, into the chat message board. If she resolves the difficulties, I'm sure she'll let us know. But for now, if you've got questions for the inspector, can you write them in the chat room? Sorry, members. Claire Jones, you had your hand up. Did you want to add something before I open it up to members? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. All I was going to mention was, I think the theme that runs through all of Sarah's presentation is that we take a problem-solving approach, and that we look to, so in say the sense of the activities in Neath, we sought to find out who was the cause of it and deal with the cause of it. So we always take a problem-solving, multi-agency, multi-partnership approach. And I think that some of the work that you've seen does show the benefit of that approach. So that was the only thing I was going to add to Sarah's presentation. And Chair, if I may, I did forget to mention this earlier. Some of the officers presenting today have never presented to scrutiny before, so I know you'll be very kind to them, but I'm sure some of them are a little nervous of this. So I thought it would be a really excellent experience for them to come today. My apologies, I should have mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. I appreciate that, and I think members are very, very kind in this committee anyway. I can't say about anybody else's committees, but ours are very, very kind indeed. They appreciate their efforts and the way they're going about their business. So I got a number of hands up. But before I go to the hands, in pre-briefing, Councillor Hugh James indicated. So I will go to Hugh first, and then I'll come to the members who have got their hands up, Scythe and Nigel, after that. Thank you. Over to you, Hugh.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Can you all hear me?
yeah.
Yes.
Oh, brilliant. Technology is working, and we're all very kind. Don't worry about us. We're a very good committee, as the Chair states, and I think the way you're presenting, and also, Sarah, you did a good presentation already. I've got a few brief questions to make, and I know that Leanne Jones is here as a Cabinet member, and we've been working very closely with you all and with the police. A couple of questions, really. I'm glad you're dealing with antisocial landlords. We've got a fair number in Britain Ferry, particularly a couple, and I'm not going to mention names. Obviously, this is a public meeting. I know we're on the case, and I think the organisation you were looking for there, Sarah, was it Smart Rent Wales and the Welsh
Smart
Government?
Wales.
That's it. You've got it. You've got it in one.
Thank you.
We're quite happy with that. Question I'm really going to dwell with is Wernworks, and this has been raised by both police recently and the residents living around there. there's a lot of work going on, needed to be cleaned up. And I'm told, Simon Brennan's probably listening in, they need planning to take the old works down, which is dangerous, but they've been told they're cleaning it up. But it's very vulnerable at the moment, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Sarah. If you could give me an update for the both members and Chris James in Britain Ferry. It is very open. Young people can get in there, and as you rightly say, on the alert list with the police, they were going to have a rave a couple of weeks ago, and that's the last thing we want. So, are you getting the cooperation from the people who are dealing with the site? That's the people who have got the liquidators in and dealing with the old company, which was Cuddy and Company.
Yeah, it's not actually with the local authority. It's NRW that have actually placed the notices on the Cuddy organisation to clear the site and secure. The site should have been secure some time ago. There were certain time limits they had to clear the site and then to put the things in place. I think they're supposed to be going to brick up the entrances, but we're waiting on that at the moment. But I know NRW are pushing. I said they're back in court on Monday. Hopefully next week I'll be able to give you an update on what was happened with that court case.
Thank you, Sarah. That's great. If we could talk after this meeting or on the telephone, I can have something drafted up to talk to the residents.
I'll get in touch with my colleague Lisa. It is in NRW that I speak to, so I'll contact her Tuesday. Fantastic. And I'll give you a call on Tuesday to let you know what the outcome was.
Yeah, and thank you, Chair.
All right, Joe, thank you. Councillor Saith Rahman, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sarah, for the presentation. I do have first-hand experience working with yourself. Obviously, we've had issues of antisocial behaviour in town centre or Port Talbot, and we worked together as and took multi-agency approach, which I'm pleased to say that it has worked. My question is, Sarah, and I hope you can answer, I know I asked this before, in terms of long-term solution in what we're trying to deal with, do you think a public space protection order would work for town centres? And if so, is there any way that both town, Neath and Port Talbot could potentially look at obtaining that piece of legislation?
I think that's above my grade, I think, Saif. I don't, at this point, we're not looking at the PSPOs because we need a lot of work to be done, and there'd be consultation before that takes place. As I said earlier, there's a couple of individuals that we know that are causing issues. I am in contact, and I have been since the meetings that we had with the officers in Port Talbot Station. And we're hoping to the one person particularly that was causing issues for some of the shops with sort of pinch, shoplifting and drinking outside. We're dealing with that at the moment, and we don't really think it's necessary. I haven't had any more contact back from the bid. Perhaps I could speak to Roger next week and see if they're experiencing any issues. There was one shop that we were aware that was selling alcohol for under or on the borders of sort of minimum pricing. Again, the licensing and trading standards have dealt with that. So I think it's best perhaps if we try to address the issues that are there, rather than going down that route, which would take an amount of time anyway. So we'd rather get things done. It'll be done more quickly without it, I think, at this point. But if you feel that the issues are still ongoing and it's still a problem, by all means, let me know, and I'll speak to them, and perhaps we could meet separately and discuss any problems.
So before I let you come back, if you want to, let me just go over to Claire George as well for a little bit extra information on your question. Claire, over to you, please.
Thank you, Chair. I know we've recently had a discussion with Karen Jones and Craig, head of legal, about this, and we really feel that they would be a blunt tool that wouldn't be really very effective. and would just push the problem somewhere else, or in fact cause, I suppose, different activities which could be even more harmful. Allied to that, I think, is the fact that it's all very well bringing in orders, you know, notwithstanding the huge amount of work that's involved in that. None of us are afraid of hard work, but then there are no resources to enforce it. So unless you can enforce it, there's no point having that piece of legislation. And equally, I think what we were discussing is that actually our approach in terms of problem solving, targeting the cause or targeting the issue, is more effective, and we bring more tools into play. There's more tools in our toolbox if we do that than by relying on sort of that sort of blunt instrument. So we're not seeing them as being particularly effective, and you know, and the evidence suggests not just what we've done locally, but you know, I suppose nationally, that our approach works. Yeah, I just thought I would add that to the conversation, Chair.
Thank you, Claire. Cabinet Member Councillor Leanne Jones, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, part of what I was going to say, Claire's covered it really. I know, thanks for that, Claire. PSPOs, Saif, you know, we've discussed and spoken about in the past as well, and I know Eleanor has spoken with Karen and the legal team, and I think we see it as a fact that we're moving the problem on to another area. But that's not to say that we won't look at it and look at other solutions, but we need to look at the bigger picture and see what the most effective course of action is, rather than moving the problem on. So it is something that we are still discussing. And obviously, like you know, Saif, I've worked with yourselves on the antisocial behaviour in Talbot. So if there is any more issues, just let the team and myself know. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Leanne. Saif, did you want to come back?
Yeah, just quickly, thank you all for your response, which I welcome. If I may ask another question, if I may, Chair.
Yes, certainly.
Quickly, yeah. I know we talked about problem solving. How do we measure how effective it is in what we're doing? Is it based on number of one-on-one calls that we receive from the shops, or what sort of, is there any platform that we use to identify the issue is being resolved? Because issue might have been gone today, but it might pop up again tomorrow.
Thanks, Saif. Claire or Sarah, who's answering this?
I think, unfortunately, that's sort of the nature of things. And as you know, when you contacted us previously, and we met, and some of the, you know, and address some of the issues that people were experiencing in Port Talbot, and obviously the police had the van, the mobile station in town, and I think that people felt, or definitely traders in the town centre felt, that things were a lot better whilst the van was there. Obviously they can't have that there 24 hours a day, 7 days, you know, a week over the year, and it was due to restrictions on their time and availability. I know that the officer in Port Talbot told me that they have got a mobile unit that has come into Western Command. So I think we might be seeing that a bit more in Neath and in Port Talbot over the coming months. But there were a couple of individuals that we were concerned about at the time, and if we can deal with that, then hopefully, you know, this problem goes away. It's not to say that it might arise again with other individuals, and we'll deal with that as and when, but it's difficult to put a long-term solution in other than monitoring the situation.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay,
Nigel, I know you're waiting, but can I bring Councillor Leanne Jones back in briefly, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think during lockdown, we've certainly seen a difference in antisocial behaviour across the county, and in particular the areas that Sarah has talked about, Talbot Town, Neath Town, Britain Ferry. And I think the multi-agency approach has worked. We've seen improvements on the streets. We've heard it from residents. we do go on the 101 calls as well, but like you know, on this committee, the 101 has good and bad reputation really for the calls it's receiving through. But I think ultimately it's about being seen out on the ground. And know in particular the van has worked in Talbot, and again, you know, the police horses in Neath, etc. So I think it's the multi-agency approach really, Saif, taking on and showing that we won't put up with it really in any of our town centres or any of our wards really, and it's working all together. And I know that the team have been doing that really well, working in partnership as a local authority with the police as well.
All right, Saif?
Yes,
Saif?
thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Councillor Nigel Hunt, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for that presentation earlier on antisocial behaviour. I just want to put on record I share Saif's concerns about the antisocial behaviour in our town centres. As some of you might know, I've been a trader in Talbot Town Centre, and I can assure you that problem was there 6 days a week. When I was trading, it was there every day, and when we did see a police presence, there was a major improvement. And it's once again, we're in the story of under resources for the police. So I know that we can't do much about that, but I think all of us would like to see the police have better resource going forward. So like I just like to reiterate, I share Saif's concerns. I'd like to bring up a couple of other things really. One of them is like Wern Works in Britain Ferry. I know that it's unsecure, but what I've noticed over there is that artists are going over there because we have no legal walls in Neath Talbot, and they're forced to go to places like the Wern Works and the Bias Works on the riverside in Talbot, because they have nowhere to go. And I have concerns about that. I know Scott has had concerns about in the past that artists are having to go to these places. I'd also like to bring up Tieback Workman's Club actually, and what is happening with that. I know that Victor, he does live on the site, and he owns the Tieback Workman's Club. I'm sure he's trying to reach out to people really, and I don't know if I could help liaise with this, because I know that he's got problems with children getting into the building, and I just don't think he's got the resource to secure it. I'm sure if there was any help available for him, I could liaise with regards to Tieback Workman's Club. And I would also like to say to police really that in August 2020, there was a serious sort of county lines being set up in Aberafan, and it was really alarming the community. It was quite frightening actually. But I'd just like to go on record on behalf of the community in Old Aberafan to thank the police for how efficient and how decisive the South Wales Police were in dealing with the county lines that was here. And it just wasn't, and I think sometimes everyone sort of thanks the serious crime squad and that, but I'd like to say that some of the PCSOs in and around Aberafan and Port Talbot were excellent around this. They'd done a lot of work. And also Darren Pike, as his communication has been excellent. And I'd just like to go on record on behalf of the community that we were really grateful for what they did in August with regards to county lines. And all right.
Yeah, thank you for that. There's a number of points in there. I would only ask Sarah or Claire to deal with any of the questions that are relating to the antisocial behaviour and in the police side of things and with the teams. Obviously, there's a few things that Nigel brought up before, and I agree with him but I think Simon, maybe you could speak to Simon outside of the meeting with property of regeneration in regard art and other factors. But I don't know if Claire or Sarah, there was some questions in there, but there was information, and I certainly support Nigel's views of how hard the police work through the county lines process. And I think that is always the police sometimes don't get the recognition. They only get bashed by most people, but I think credit needs to be given as Nigel has in that aspect. But picking up on his questions through to you both, Did you want to respond on certain parts of it? Over to either of you then, and thank you.
As you said, Steve, I can't really comment on the street artists. I'm not aware of that, but perhaps that's something I have made a note of it. And as I said, we'll be doing a bit of work with the youth service and youth offending team next year. Perhaps that's something that could be picked up. I'm not saying they're all young people, it might not necessarily be so, but it's something that can be picked up there. And again, it's identifying somewhere that they can go rather than stopping them going to a certain place, because it just moves the problem on, as we said, with other matters. So I'm not sure if there was, I think all the other things have been addressed other than that.
Claire, anything to add?
No, the issue of the Talbot Club was raised at the recent Community Safety Partnership, and I know an action was taken for NRW to convene a meeting to discuss that, because I think lots of people have concerns about that. I would need to find out the current position on that, because I know colleagues in environmental health were going to liaise with NRW and Sarah. So hopefully we'll be able to update you in due course on further action in respect of that. But note the offer of contact with the owner, which we can share with environmental health colleagues.
Is that all right, Nigel?
Yes, Steve. Yeah, if I can help with the Talbot Workmen's Club, I'd like to really to resolve that. I'm sure Rachel would as well. But I know I've met the landlord, and I think he does reach out at times. So if you could have help, that would be appreciated.
There we are. Excellent. Thank you for that, Nigel. Councillor Sean Percy, you did have a hand up and took it down. Do you still want to ask a question, Sean? Sean, can you hear me? Councillor Percy, you still here? Oh, I don't see him. Seems to have lost him. Anybody else got any questions on this antisocial behaviour plan? No? I just had a little bit, nothing major. I certainly agree with some of the questions asked and raised and the answers. I think a plan is a plan at the end of the day. It's a live document. I would urge members to feed into this, especially for their own communities. Of course, that's the most important part. You need to work closely with the cabinet member, all officers, and the police to deliver. We all know and we all are aware, and nothing's going to change dramatically over the next couple of years, in my opinion. Is resources are very difficult. Therefore, we do what we can to the best of our ability to meet the challenges and the needs of our communities. But please remember to take your questions, take your concerns to the cabinet member, to the officers, so that they are aware of them. There is no point in going through social media or any other format to voice your frustration or concerns when you as members have the opportunity to do it in the right way. Partnership working is key. I've learned the hard way. I've been here long enough to understand that I've probably a loose cannon, but at the end of the day, I think it's more passion than trying to cause any disruption or any problems. But I would urge all members, that's just from me, my views, is to work with everybody in this meeting and others outside of the meeting so that we can deal with it to the best of our ability. We are not going to get it right completely or always, but we can only do the best we can. That's my little bit. Leanne, you have your hand up again. I'll come back to you now then. Councillor Leanne Jones.
I do, thank you, Chair, and I agree with you on that. If we don't know about the problem, then we can try and help with the problem and, arrange these meetings. I think it's safe to say, like I said earlier, antisocial behaviour has become a problem. It's not going to go away overnight, But if we don't know about it, then we can't help with the situation. So if you do have any concerns in any of your wards, please get in contact with myself. Obviously, we've got Sarah Williams, who's our antisocial behaviour coordinator, and Eleanor Wellington, who's the Community Safety Partnership Officer. I mean, they have been pulled out as well and doing safe and well during this time, but I think they've made, done a sterling job over the last few months. So just want to thank Sarah and the team with regards to antisocial behaviour, because I know we've had a number of meetings and a number of positive meetings really with multi-agency, in particular the police, and I think overall it has worked well. So like you said, Steve, indeed we do need to know about it. Don't go to social media and post about it. We've got the teams in place here, and obviously the police have got the 101 service and reporting service. So if I can help with anything, just let me know. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah. Thank you for that, and yeah, I reiterate that and give our thanks from this committee to all the officers, all the teams that you work with, because we do appreciate it. Right, I'll move on. The next part of this presentation is the domestic abuse. And before I do, Chloe, do you know the presentation? I think you left it up because it's a rolling presentation, but I think Leanne put in the chat. Can you take it down when we're having our discussions, and then if you need to pop it back up, that'll be great. But it is a bit distracting because I only see the members on the bottom bar instead of in full view. So just the point on that. But who's dealing with the domestic abuse item, please? Over to you.
Back to me, I'm afraid, Chair. You'll be sick of hearing from me. As I said, Alison was going to present these slides, but I sent her apologies this morning. So this slide concentrates on the Independent Domestic Violence Advisor Service. And I think the important thing, there's a lot of words on the slide, and you'll be glad to know I'm not going to read the slides. I think the important thing, though, is to note that even though we've had a real increase in demand on the IDVA service during COVID-19, we have been able to maintain high standards of service provision and adapt to working arrangements and practices. So we've still been delivering that service all through the COVID-19 pandemic and continue to do so. We had, and some stats later on will show that we've had a big increase in demand on that service, as you can imagine, with all the stresses and strains of living through these difficult and uncertain times. And I'm pleased to say that we were able to get some additional resources to appoint 2 new IDVAs into the service, so that will ease the pressure internally caused by an increase in demand, and also will give us perhaps some scope to enhance and develop the service provision going forward. We also hold responsibility for the multi-agency risk assessment conference in respect of domestic abuse, and we've recently appointed a coordinator to that role, and that role is absolutely pivotal in ensuring that there's a proper flow of information, that risks are shared, that clear notes are taken, clear actions are recorded. So having somebody into that role is really important in terms of protecting vulnerable people, vulnerable families and vulnerable children. The service has continued, and also we want to ensure that people are aware of the training that's in place. So training on the MAREX has continued, and I think there is, importantly, there's a steering group to oversee the work of the MAREC, and that is actually reflecting on whether it's effective and that we could see some changes to that MAREC steering group. If we go to the next slide, please. Okay, so between April 20 to October 20, we saw 268 referrals for high-risk cases. So we, in that period, we saw that about 64% engaged with the service, and that's, that's a good figure to have in terms of engagement. This was meaningful engagement with people where management and safety planning was implemented. We did have some people who declined the help of the IDVA service, and that's their right if they choose to, but where they do take up that help is really powerful in terms of managing their risk and keeping people safe. We did have a small percentage, 10%, where we were unable to make direct contact, but I can assure you that we do make robust efforts to contact people because we want to make sure that people are protected and safe. And I think it's important to note that we're looking at the number of referrals, but that in terms of those referrals, 335 children were linked to cases referred to the service. And we have noted through the, as you'll know, there's a Behaviour SV leadership group, and that has picked up an issue from some of our specialist providers that they are seeing a decline in the number of children they support. So whilst we're still seeing children coming through for support, some of our specialist agencies aren't. So there is a bit of work that we've got to do to get to the bottom of that, and that's been tasked within the Behaviour SV leadership group. So, you know, we have ongoing cases within the MARAC processes. So just some noticeable trends by the service. There's been an increase in cases where pregnancy has been identified. We've seen some increase in male victims. And the last one about a reduction in referrals of repeat complex cases is really interesting, and we don't understand why that would be, because in our normal operation of the IDVA, we would see some cases coming back where they're complex or whatever, and we're not necessarily seeing that, and we could be seeing some cases that are just, you know, the first time into the service. If I can go on to the next slide. The Behaviour SV leadership group and the work of, I suppose, the IDVAs and I suppose domestic abuse policy more generally. So we have concentrated a lot of our work on being victim focused, but we are now preparing to do more work in respect to perpetrators. Excuse me, with the opportunity to change their behaviour. So there is a Police and Crime Commissioner funded programme for perpetrators called Drive, and that's began to be implemented in Western Bay. I haven't got much detail on that, so if anybody asks me a question, that'll be one I'll have to come back to you on. But to say that it is an intensive intervention through the Drive programme that works with high harm and serial perpetrators to challenge their behaviours and therefore reduce this work. And then a Drive IDVA has been recruited to work within the Drive team. So whilst a lot of our work is about victims, we are now looking at perpetrators. So looking at this from all angles, really. If I can have the next slide, please. Oh, the next slide isn't me. So I'll stop on the IDVA service, Chair, and I'll take any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. Yeah, remembering this is on the domestic abuse, as we mentioned. I'll bring in my Vice Chair first, Councillor Rachel, if you would come in first, please.
Thank you, Chair. Claire, just on the Drive perpetrator scheme, I know you haven't got all the details, so you may have to come back to me. Is that something that perpetrators undertake voluntarily, or is it ordered by?
I believe it's voluntary. I believe it's voluntary, but I would need to just check on that detail and come back to you. if you don't mind, I'd rather say I don't know than give misinformation. I'll come back to you, Councillor Taylor.
Is that all right, Rach?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'd be interested. I'll wait for that. That's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Scythe, do you have a hand up?
No, Chair.
Anybody else got questions on domestic abuse? No? I will just add one little bit, Claire. I mean, I appreciate domestic abuse. Oh, wait a minute, Nigel. Nigel, I'll go to you first then. Councillor Nigel, and please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to be brief, what can I ask what percentage increase domestic abuse has been in lockdown? Because we were getting reports it's gone up higher. Is there a percentage increase, please?
I don't think it's as easy to put into those terms, but I know for the IDVA service, we did see a very dramatic increase. I got a figure in my head, but I'm reluctant to give that over in a public meeting if it's not correct. Again, it was a very dramatic increase on demand for the IDVA service over the lockdown period. Suffice to say that it was putting enormous pressure on the IDVA service, and that's why we were able to get an additional 2 IDVAs to help deal with that increase in demand. But there was a massive increase through to the IDVA service, but I can come back to you with the exact percentage.
Okay,
right,
thanks,
nice.
Claire. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, I think you stole. Sorry, Claire, go on.
But that would, can I just say that would be to the IDVA service. You know, the trends to specialist agencies and things like that would be maybe different, and maybe that's something that could come in your forward work programme or something. We could look at the trends into specialist providers or something like that. But certainly it can come back to the to Scrutiny with some more information on the trends over the lockdown into IDVA and what's been I can't speak now, reported by our specialist providers.
Thank you, Claire. Nigel, is that an old hand or did you want to come back? Nigel?
That is an old hand, Steve. So, yeah, I look forward to seeing the trends.
Yeah. The point I was going to raise, Claire, is I probably you've covered it with no stats, but yeah, domestic abuse has gone through the roof. The coronavirus has amplified this, obviously. Clubs and pubs, and we know the circumstances out there. The couples are together more. They may be drinking at home more. We know the trends, we know the reasons, but my question is this. While the resources and the difficulties we have, I'm still doing our best job, as I mentioned in the last report on antisocial behaviour. I have concerns, and you mentioned maybe we as a committee could put a forward work programme item to specifically deal with certain items, and then we'll have that discussion, I'm sure. But there's a lot of non-reporting, and I want to emphasise as councillors, we are corporate parents. We have a duty to report. It's not always easy. And we also have a duty to encourage neighbours and others if they see anything that they feel needs reported, should report. Irrespective of resources, this is something very alarming and quite serious with what is going on at homes. And not just that. Domestic abuse is something that is obviously going through the roof, and unless we can find a way of tackling it properly, I fear that serious harm or even deaths could occur. And I just want to put that in there, that I don't expect you to answer, you know, but I think it needs to be looked at in more of a singular perhaps item, for this committee, but that's another day for a discussion. I don't know if you want to make any comments to me because you've got your hand up, but I'll move on if you don't, Claire. Up to you. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, obviously, we do have our Vowder SV strategy, which is very clear about the priorities around the work of that group and does detail much of what we've spoken about this morning, including the increased demand in services. But one of the priorities of that strategy has been to make sure that messages have got out there, that services are still open, support is still available, help is still there, you can still report it. So we have been very clear about getting those messages out there as much as we can through all sorts of ways and means, just to make sure that people know they don't have to suffer, that support is there. So just to reassure you that the strategy does address those issues and as a priority, making it clear that support is still there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, I accept that. Right, moving on, the last item of the presentation is the hate, crime and drug abuse. Again, props back to you, is it? Thank you.
Beth and Dennedy's going to go through the hate crime slides. I'll do one slide for the substance misuse, and then my members of my team, Matthew and Erica, will deal with some of the remaining slides. I thought it would be nice for Scrutiny to meet some of the people on the ground doing the work.
Right.
So if I hand over to Beth then.
Yeah, on this one, then you can roll this through so they can pass on to their colleagues. I won't stop on this one. We'll fulfill this whole together, hate, crime and drug abuse, and then we'll come to members for questions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Beth, and I'm the Community Cohesion Officer for Neath Talbot. I started the role back at the end of January, so wasn't doing it for very long before, obviously, the lockdown, etc. happened. So things changed quite dramatically, and then was helping out with the Safe and Well scheme. I'm also helping out with the comms team at the minute as well, because I help with Councillor Ram and I help with the MPT BME Community Association also, and we've got some social media sites, so they kind of cross over quite well. So that's a really good way for me to monitor social media as well if there's anything going on, and I can help then report it to the police. We have a weekly tensions monitoring meeting with Sergeant Tim Burrell, and lots of partners from the area join in, for example, Swansea University, etc. And we can share some of what we've noticed in the area. So the first slide I've actually got here is a chart is provided by Victim Support. They send out a monthly update. This is actually from November because I haven't received the report from November yet. It comes out at the end of the month. You can see each local authority area, and then it's quite small, but if anybody wants the report, I'm happy to send it out. It's basically the breakdown, the rolling months of the hate crimes that have been reported. It's at the beginning of the coronavirus issues, towards the beginning of February, March, when it sort of became big news before the lockdown. There were quite serious concerns within the Chinese community, and we were having a lot of reports that a lot of the Chinese people in our shops, for example, were getting abuse, and in the university as well, because it was insistent they were calling it the Chinese virus, etc. So hate crime did spike in that area. However, it's sort of been fairly consistent. It hasn't risen quite dramatically through the months, which is a good thing, obviously, but we would like it to completely be reduced. Excuse me. So can you go on to the next slide, please, Chloe? Thank you. So this is another breakdown then of the actual types of hate crime that have been reported. So you can see in Neath Talbot, we've had 2 disability, we've had no gender identity or trans, we've had 9 racial incidents, no religious, 1 sexual orientation and 1 unknown. So it is obviously quite varied and quite different all the time. So it's I hate talking about this because it's quite emotional sometimes. The fact that people do get abused, and it's really difficult. Can you go on to the next slide, please, Chloe? So in terms of my work, I do quite a lot of different strands to the job. Like you've mentioned about the domestic abuse stuff. You've mentioned if I can help out with the team in any way, or we can do any. I always try to help out with that as well. But I do work quite closely with PC Ann Overton. She's the hate crime officer in Neath Police Station. She has been given a new role at the moment with the JET team. So her focus is taken a little bit away from hate crime. However, she does send me weekly reports from the Western BCU. I had that report, I think it was yesterday, and there has been a couple of incidents. One this week. So if anybody again wants that report, I can send that out. Back in October, to try and raise awareness of hate crime, it was Hate Crime Awareness Week between the 10th and the 17th of October. So with myself and Anne, we worked together to do a couple of different events, and unfortunately are all online at the minute, the same as everything. But there was an online launch event that took place on Saturday, the 10th of October. I worked with Race Council Cymru, Victim Support. Lots of members of SWP joined. We had some speakers. The Right Honourable Commissioner for South Wales joined us, and he was a speaker as well. So that went down really well. And I know Councillor Rahman joined that as well, and was involved in the discussion with comments online, and that was really, really, really good. Another thing that we did was a webinar on the 12th of October with a lady called Artie Shah. She was due to take part in an International Women's Day event at the beginning of the year, but that was postponed. So she did a webinar on hate crime. She is only 4 foot tall, and she's an actress, and she was talking about her life and how hate crime has impacted on her. And it was really, really, really touching, really interesting. And I've had really, really excellent feedback from everybody who was involved. So we could look again to do something similar in the future. I think listening to personal stories really does change your opinion on things, because it's easy to pass over what goes on if you just get statistics, but hearing it from the horse's mouth, as it were, was really, really impactful. Also, I worked to promote hate crime awareness training. It was with Race Council Cymru and Ann Overton, hate crime officer. She was doing what they were calling community champion hate crime awareness training, to try and get people out in the community able to share what hate crime is, how to report it, etc. We also had a staff training for the council staff in that week as well, but unfortunately that was postponed because the trainer was from Victim Support and they were unable to do it. So we are looking to rearrange that for the future. Also working with Anne, back in October, we started a monthly trans drop-in online. So it takes part in the evenings. Anne is really passionate about the trans community in Neath Talbot. So we thought it was a nice way to set something up. Anne will check everybody who signs up to make sure that this is a safe space for everybody that joins. And it's just like a chat, drop in a chat. And the plan is, if things are successful, to perhaps get some experts involved in the future, and to help with help and advice as well. Or if anybody wants to join that, we are able to. If you want to get in touch with me again, we haven't posted it out on social media or anything, because at the minute, it's because it's quite a sensitive subject for some people, and some of the people who've joined haven't actually come out to their families yet. It's sort of word of mouth at the minute, and the trans community are speaking to each other and sharing those details. But if you know anybody that would like to join, if you want to get in touch with me, that's fine. Yeah, so it's difficult at the minute because, again, everything's online, and I'm sure I was very new to the role, but if things were different, we would have done so much more. But things are taking off again, and it's good to know that things are getting back to normal, as it were. So that's it from me at the moment. But if anybody wants any of the statistics or anything, I'm happy to send them out to the members. If you're happy, just get in touch with me. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Beth, and I'm sure there'll be questions at the end. Who's dealing with the next part of it, the drug abuse? Or Claire, you're on mute.
If Chloe could have the slides, but just to by way of introduction, Chair, the Neath Talbot Council hosts the Area Planning Board Substance Misuse Commissioning and Delivery Team. And hosts in terms of receiving the funding for across the region. So I brought with me today 2 officers who are part of that team. One is Matthew Rafferty, he's the harm reduction lead, and he'll deal with some of the slides. And the other is Erica, who's a contractor monitoring officer, who really ensures that the services that are delivered in the region meet the required standards. I just wanted to lead, I suppose, the presentation by highlighting a key piece of work that's been started in the region in terms of substance misuse. We recognise that the way substance misuse services are delivered across the region needs to improve. And we had commissioned consultants to undertake a review of substance misuse services. That review resulted in a report looking at a revised model. But further work following a national drug summit led to the concept of a new fully integrated public health model, seeing the people with substance misuse as a person and as a whole person, and that the treatment should follow for the person rather than, you know, whether they've come in through criminal justice or whatever. So the area planning boards and the joint public services boards have agreed to start work to develop a new public health integrated model. And as I said, it's a real focus on prevention as well as treatment, but also around diversionary activities, around enforcement. It is going to be a massive transformation project. So I wanted to give Scrutiny the early heads up on this transformation project. It's still early days. It's not long been agreed by Joint Public Services Board. So we are looking at, there will be a team led by the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office, but we're also looking at a different way of commissioning the service in terms of having a more collaborative or combined approach, which will also see the pooling of budgets across health, the area planning board, SMAF funding, police and crime commissioners funding, to really develop a much more effective, accessible service that deals with the person as a whole. And it is so exciting, and I really hope that it will, you know, we hope it'll start gathering steam now in the new year. It isn't a quick fix. I just want to say from the start that it is something that will take time and does take time, but I think it's something that hopefully Scrutiny would be interested in. So that's just highlighting that we're starting work on a new service model. If we go on to the next slide, and I think Erica, are you taking this slide?
Yes, I'll do the next 3, I think. Yes. So this slide is just to let you know about how services have adapted to the pandemic. Pretty much the same as a lot of other services across other sectors have adapted, really. They continued to operate, but in different ways. So a lot of the face-to-face work that used to happen doesn't happen now, and that includes group work and one-to-ones. But what's happening instead is that there's virtual groups that are being set up so people can attend those online. Appointments where possible are over the phone or over virtual media. And there is still some face-to-face work being carried out for people who are at risk and need that, with social distancing being observed and the use of PPE where necessary. there's the services that particularly third sector colleagues have developed quite a lot of resources as well that they're published on their internet sites for people, but by the way of sort of self-help guides. So there's a lot of information out there for people to use to try and help themselves, and as well a lot more information about the services so that people know where to go if they need help. One of the good things really about the pandemic, particularly in our sector, and I think we've seen it across other sectors as well, is that it has inspired improvements in the way that organisations are working together. So everybody's being quite flexible in their approach, adapting to things, and mucking in together to help each other where there's particular pressures across different services, and I think they're generally doing their best to make sure that people can get the support that they need given the circumstances that we're in. And an example of that, which is the last bullet point on this page, is a joint working agreement across all our services to help ensure that people who need to self-isolate and don't have anybody to help them can still access their medication. Because some of the prescribing medication, it comes under the controlled drugs, so it's quite difficult. The pharmacies can struggle to deliver, and so yeah, everybody's mucking in, and I think that's, you know, probably a positive that's come out of the pandemic, and hopefully something that will continue long afterwards. So the next slide then, please, Chloe. So this is about how the pandemic has affected on service levels. So services have seen an increase in the number of people that have been referred to them in Q2. So that's July to September compared to April, June of this year. So we have done a little bit of work with the providers to try and look at why this has happened, why there's been a bit of a peak. What the providers are reporting is that particularly in the early days of the pandemic, people weren't coming forward to ask for help because they were thinking, oh, I'll wait until the pandemic's over and then approach services. But as time's gone by, people have realised, well, the pandemic's not going away anytime soon. So like the first quarter, there was a dip in the number of people who access services, and then it started to go back up again in Q2. There's people reported as well, especially in the first 3 months of the pandemic, where we had the lockdown situation. It was nice weather, people were furloughed, so people didn't have so much, weren't able to access so many things to do, to have things to do with their time. So a lot more people were drinking, you know, either through boredom or just making the most of being at home in the sunny weather, like it was a permanent holiday for a while. So you know, that's probably one of the reasons why that peak has gone up then afterwards in Q3. I think with the young people, though, our services did have a look at that because there was a bit of a concern about more young people accessing services. But what as a result of the work they've done to look into that, what they've been able to establish is that that's not because more young people are using, it's because more young people have become aware. There's more awareness out there now with the help that's available. And actually, for young people, the pandemic has almost had an opposite effect because of the lockdown, they aren't going out so much and they're not mixing with their peers so much. So actually drug use among young people has gone down. So the last slide for me now, please, Chloe. So this is just to update you about some of the developments that are going on within the substance misuse services. So in the last financial year, we set up and established some robust contract monitoring systems and processes, which have come fairly well embedded now. And these processes help us to understand and identify any issues where related to the effectiveness and the efficiency of services. And an example given there is around the counselling service, where it became evident that it wasn't giving us value for money. So we worked with the service provider to recost that, which has reduced the level of funding, but we still continue to have the same amount of provision. So we've saved some funding there. And that's then released some funding that we can use to invest in additional units of low threshold prescribing. And that then, by increasing the number of low threshold places, it means it's going to free up resources within the prescribing services that work with people with more complex needs. So it's working quite well. We're identifying some areas where we can make savings so that we can invest in other areas that are priority for Western Bay. In addition to this, we've purchased a number of spaces in a provider we've not previously commissioned to deliver a rapid access service. So this means that people who are most at risk of harm or overdose can access a prescribing service quite quickly, and they're actually getting people in from date of referral to the date where they start prescribing. That can happen within 5 working days, so it is working quite quickly. The only delay with it really is where people would be quite hard to find. So that service has adopted an assertive outreach approach. So if people don't turn up for appointments, they go out and they find them, and then they just don't give up on people. They keep trying, and we've had some feedback from one of the service users saying, you know, how it wasn't until the worker went and found him that he thought nobody cared about him. So that the fact that somebody had gone out of their way to go and find him and track him down and make sure he got a lot to him. There's a couple of other developments going on at the moment. So we have identified an issue with the way that people are accessing services at the moment, and which has been for a few years now, has been through an assessment service, but that assessment service doesn't have the capacity to be able to assess the number of people that need to come into service. So we've developed a proposal for delivering that in a different way, or to have the route into services operate in a different way. And we're currently working with our partners across services to make sure that the proposed new process will work without having any negative impact, with the aim of if it's going to work to bring something about that in the new financial year. And we've also, as part of the development of a new contract monitoring framework, we've looked at the information that we're asking our services to record and report on, to make sure that that information is useful to us, that it's not too much of an administrative burden for them, but it gives the area planning board the information they need to be able to make decisions about the future commissioning of services, and to identify any issues with performance. So in the new year, as a result of that, we're going to look at developing a series of dashboards which can be used by contract monitoring and by the area planning board to alert us if there's anything that's starting to go wrong with services that we need to take any action to address. So that's it for my 3 slides. I'll hand over to Matthew now to go on to the last 2 slides on substance misuse.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Yeah. So first of all, we're looking at the take-home naloxone program, and comparing Q1 data and Q2 data. There shows there were 48 kits given out, 48 less kits given out in Q2. But when we dig in a bit deeper to the data, in Q1 we saw a 40% increase of kits given out in the early stage of the pandemic. So that was March and April when we saw the first national lockdown. For those who don't know, naloxone's given out to people who are taking opiates, and it reverses the effects of an opiate overdose, potentially keeping people alive. The wider outcomes, I'll report on that a little bit later on. And for the first time last year and this year, we've been able to offer nasal and injectable naloxone, with the nasal naloxone offering an opportunity to give the kits out to the wider community and wider partners, family and carers who typically wouldn't be able to carry injectable kits or not trained in them. The next slide then, so South Wales Police have agreed to carry nasal naloxone on a voluntary basis. Sorry, previous slide, please. Oh, there we are. South Wales Police have agreed to carry nasal naloxone on a voluntary basis. It was declined by the Police Federation, but we're working now for officers to come forward on a voluntary basis, and we're hoping then once officers start carrying it, it will be agreed by Police Federation, and the entire South Wales Police force will be carrying nasal kits then. Outreach workers were delivering kits, and there's postal services available on request. We're identifying the most at risk on those who can't come into services because they might be vulnerable, self-isolating, etc., so we can get the kits out to the wider community where needed. Workers of the ambassador have also been trained, so I know Wales Online have published some negative press recently around the Ambassador Hotel, but recent visits when we've been in there, the staff are absolutely phenomenal in there, and all staff and security now are trained in naloxone use and are open for services to come on board and deliver services in the Ambassador Hotel. Within needle exchange as well, so the needle and syringe programme, we saw between a 40 and 50% decrease across the region in exchange activity. Data shows that activity mainly pointed towards iPad users, steroid users. So iPad is image and performance enhancing drugs. With the restrictions on travel, gyms closing, the motivations for use they weren't there for steroid users. So we think that's the fall. And it's mainly seen within pharmacies. Our substance misuse services in Wakada, they did as consistent and remain consistent since the early lockdown period. Can I have the next slide, please, Chloe? So within the harm reduction work we're doing, there's the Drug Poisoning Task Force has been established. So the Drug Poisoning Task Force was originally called the Drug Poisoning Subcommittee. So Keris Thomas, the case review coordinator, who's appointed at the same time and as part of our team, she reviews all drug poisonings and provides intervention and support those who have had non-fatal overdoses. So within that, we've had a greater growth within the group, greater governance and strengthened the governance, and greater increased policies and procedures. We're able to monitor the drug poisonings more in depth. And what Keris has been pivotal to do, she's bringing the person behind the data within these reviews. So we're able to understand the person holistically rather than just reviewing a data set and trying to get down the leaderboard. So there's been a big increase in pushing the notifications of non-fatal overdoses. We are the only area planning board in Wales that has notifications from the emergency department on overdoses. So what we've been able to do in place with that, so with the naloxone, as an intervention, we've put in place the 72-hour rapid review protocol, which means services have got to intervene within 72 hours and letter sending won't be accepted. They've got to have a physical face-to-face and provide brief interventions, harm reduction, and naloxone as a bare minimum. We've been seen as the leaders or the innovators across Wales for doing this as well, and there's a lot of interest in the work we are doing. There's been a decrease in drug-related deaths for 2019, as people have probably seen. The recent ONS data shows a 30% reduction in cases in Swansea and 77% in Neath Talbot. Neath Talbot was the biggest, the biggest reduction in Wales within the ONS data as well, which is testament to the service delivery that was going on. And what we found, echoing Claire's words, Councillor Jones and Erica's and Sarah's words, partnership is growing, so everyone's taking accountability for what's going on in their area, and substance use is quite topical in a lot of stakeholders and partners. I believe that's it then for our slides.
Thank you, Matthew. Claire, did you want to add anything before you open it up to questions?
No, Chair, I was just going to say that was a quick romp through of some of our work. I know we've tried to cover an awful lot this morning, but obviously more than happy if Scrutiny wants to look at anything in more detail to happily come back and give more in-depth slides on any issue. I'm losing my words now, so I think I'll go back to my cup of tea, Councillor, unless there's any questions.
That's okay. I'm sure members appreciate it's a whistle-stop tour, but it's an important part, an integral part of what you do. So we welcome that. In pre-briefing, I had Councillor Dean. Did you want to come in because you have to? Did you want to come? Yeah. Scythe,
that'll be great.
You after Dean. I'll go to Dean, Councillor Dean Causey first, because he needs to leave our path. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Scythe, for letting me come in quickly. It's just it's a question on hate crime, and the question is: have we got any capacity to do some work on prevention, not just awareness raising, but perhaps working with Facebook specifically, but other social media providers. You know, I'm becoming increasingly disturbed by the role social media has in perpetuating fake news and polarized political messages that is clearly having an impact then on on the growth of hate crime. I mentioned in the last meeting, I don't know if anybody's seen the Netflix documentary. I can't remember what it's called now. It'll come to me. Anyway, about this very subject. And whereas previously, perhaps, you know, when you're watching a TV program or broadcast news, or you're looking at the press, we're all seeing the same thing. We can interpret it differently, of course, but we're seeing the same thing. Whereas when people are logging into Facebook, as I say specifically, but other platforms as well, you're seeing an increasingly individualized and tailored version of the world, the version of reality. And if you're clicking on stuff that's promoting, you know, religious hate crime or race, particular messages around racism, the more you click on that, the more you see it. So I just wondered if there's any work that we're doing with Facebook and other providers to tackle this locally, really, to push messages. You know, if I wanted to pay for an advert, then I could pay for an advert in Neath Talbot. You know, could we do something along those lines? I'll stop talking now. That wasn't brief, was it? Apologies.
That's okay. Do you get your two Pennyworth then? Who's going to take this? Beth or Matthew?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. There's nothing
Is
specific in terms of paid advertising or anything like that, but it's definitely, especially with my work with comms at the minute, is something that I can look into and try and see what we've got. Because I know, excuse me, I've been to webinars and things in the past, particularly in terms of my other role, which is channel panel coordinator. And I know there are lots of things out there, especially in terms of the community safety aspect in general. And BBC Bite Size do infographics, videos, etc. on fake news and what is fake news. There are loads and loads of things out there, so I can have a look at putting something together and just to see if we can share it, because we've got the community safety, social media, we've got the access to the comms, the corporate comms as well, and the BME Association as well. So there's lots of aspects that we can do. In terms of actual Facebook itself, it's difficult because we have no control in what they allow and what they don't allow. So it's difficult in that, because I think it's more of it's higher up than just us in Neath Talbot, you know, because I know recently they've said that they're not going to put, they're going to stop the fake news about the coronavirus vaccine. For example, that was on there yesterday. So I think if we try our best, we're obviously, like I said, and I'm sure there's bound to be, we can look into, Claire, look, and Eleanor, into funding about, you know, like paid campaigns, etc. And I'm sure in terms of like locally as well, it's something that perhaps Western Bay can look into, because it is, and we can put money behind it. That I don't see why that's a problem. I can speak to Riaz Hassan about that as well if we think it's a good idea. Hope that answers your question.
Dean, are you all right? Dean?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Beth.
Scythe that just said it's called Social Dilemma, Dean.
Brilliant. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, that's the one, Social Dilemma.
Thank you for
Take
that,
care.
Bethan.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you. Scythe, over to you for your question now, please. Scythe, you still here?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Oh, you're there now. Right.
Sorry,
yeah, over to you then, Scythe.
My microphone was muted. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Bethan and Claire, for the presentation. My questions are in line with what Dean has said. It's obvious that more and more people are now using social media to get their news, and there seems to be a vast number of fake news currently on social media that possibly young people, and not just young people, even adults, kind of believe in. Our police colleagues are here with us today. I don't know if Claire is able to answer this question, but I just wanted to find out whether within Neath Talbot has anyone ever been prosecuted on social media in terms of promoting hate speech or promoting hate crime. And that was one of my questions. The other second question is that I personally think there needs to be a lot of work around young people, especially in school, secondary school, where I think the authority and the police colleagues need to do a bit more work in terms of preventive work and not just raising awareness of hate crime, because young people, they use social media, more now than they ever did before. So more of a social media hate-related incident locally, I wanted to know. That was my question, Chair. I don't know whether police has that data that they can share with us. And in terms of someone, sorry, Chair, I'm delaying this, but in terms of if someone comes across a hate speech or a post that is being locally shared, I know there are 2 local platforms within Neath Talbot. I don't know who administers them, but they allow it. So there's a deeper issue of admin allowing certain posts to be posted to incite hate locally. So I don't know what powers police has in terms of dealing with these issues.
Thank you, Syed. Your mic did still go a little bit quiet. I'm hoping the officers picked up on your questions. Before I bring whoever's coming back in, Bethan, perhaps, can I also ask you for your questions to be, well, you can put it in the chat if you like. I don't know if the inspector is Claire is still with us. I don't think she is, but we'll get those questions over to the inspector as well. So if you want, either you can email them to our Claire, or you can email or get contact details for the inspector, who should have been here to verbally answer them, but technology has let her down this morning in this instance. But if you have heard what Syed has said, I don't know who wants to pick up on some of the points he's raised first. But is it going to be Bethan or Claire? Are you coming in? Go on, I go to Claire first then. Okay.
No, I was nominating Bethan actually.
I was going to nominate. It's something that Claire, Inspector Claire from SWP would have to answer in terms of those statistics, because obviously the police have different powers in terms of what they can and can't investigate and access on Facebook. That's something that I wouldn't be able to answer, I'm afraid. Quickly though, in terms of schools, obviously things are so different at the minute. Again, going into schools is difficult. Things, I know in the past the team usually do crucial crew at the end of the year. That's had to stop, and I believe that there is in a few schools. I do have the list of schools. I don't have it on me at the minute. There is a scheme being rolled out in the schools for some training for staff, and I believe it's Show Racism, the red card aimed at the children. So I think is something that the police perhaps would need to do and look into. Perhaps you want to ask Claire about that again. Saif, if you feel that the police need to do some sort of preventative measures or preventative training, then that might again be something to ask Claire. Thank you.
Bethan, before I bring any other members in, Saif has indicated in the chat that he will email the inspector, and I'm sure the inspector, it's disappointing but it's not her fault that she wasn't here this morning. But Saif will email the inspector, and I'm sure he'll get his answers to all his questions in that way. I'll move on. Next indicated to ask the question was Councillor Sean Percy, please.
Thank you, Chair. Hope you can hear me okay. Yeah, it's not so much a question, I suppose. It's a bit of some thoughts on the issue. Dean has hit the nail on the head really with the problem we've got with social media at the minute, and that is these echo chambers that people get put in, and it's particularly dangerous because a lot of people, and we're not just talking young people, people across the community of all ages who are not aware that social media companies are doing this, may have an extreme view that is not being challenged, and rather than being challenged, they're put into a group of other people who share the same extreme views, which normalizes those views. And I've had several exchanges with people online, and they go, oh, well, all my friends think the same. And they're not talking about people perhaps they know in real life. It's actually their news feed on Facebook is full of the same. This was a particular issue around Black Lives Matter at the time in the summer. but it is a really, really big issue. One that is far beyond, you know, our ability as a local council and even South Wales Police to tackle, but one we've got to be aware of, because, you know, we're dealing with, you know, social media platforms and issues that we've not dealt with in the past, that are beyond the realms of, you know, local police control. And what we're talking about here is, you know, people's perception of what is acceptable as well, and there's so much unchallenged hate crime and racism going around on social media. I'm really concerned about it, and I just think it, you know, we all need to lobby and push for the appropriate actions to be taken on this. You know, education is part of it, and I think, you know, starting in schools is really important that young people understand how these social media platforms work, and how it will respond to their views and their interests, and that's certainly part of the issue. But for adults using social media that are not going to get that, you know, necessary education or understanding, we've got a real big challenge on our hands in terms of how we deal with that. I just wanted to kind of reinforce that point, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. I completely agree with every single word Sean has just said there. How we deal with it, or how we help to mitigate against this issues in partnership. Again, I mention partnership all the time, Bethan, but I think it's something that we need to be mindful of, and able to address it in the appropriate platform at the appropriate time. But he makes real valid points, and I don't know if you want to come back on some of them, Bethan. I'll hand over to you now then. Thank you.
Thank you. No, yeah, I completely agree as well. But it's obviously, it's not just us that have this problem. It's going to be the whole of, well, the world probably, isn't it? It's not just a local problem, a local issue. And I think, yeah, lobbying again for higher up people to deal with these issues and make sure that Facebook, etc., are responsible for what goes on there. There's also, though, if there are concerning comments or the same, like repeat offenders, for example, there's always the channel panel process as well. If you feel that they are at risk for being radicalized, or if their views are really going to cause actual like, you know, consequences or harm to other people. So there is that there as well, that the channel panel can be involved, and that WEC2, etc., could get involved and take things further in terms of individuals. So that's something there also in the background if it is concerning in terms of individuals. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. And Sean, you okay? Do you want to come back, or you okay?
Yeah, no, that's fine. You know, I'm not expecting all the answers for the worldwide problems today, but I appreciate the support.
Thanks, John. Councillor Scott Bamsey, please. On mute, Scott. You're on mute.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Just a quick point, if I may. I witnessed, you know, quite vile comments on social media earlier on in the year, and I did report it as well as I think many others reported it. And I'm pleased to say that a few weeks later, PC Ann Overton did get back to me as well with feedback, which was quite encouraging. Just on the point of like social media, and if we are going to share things, I think it's important that we educate people to say that, you know, people are accountable for what they put online, and that it is a crime. So I think people need to be aware that, you know, the process of reporting, you know, these incidents, because it does take courage sometimes to speak out about it, especially when it's on a local forum, and, you know, you fear for repercussions if, you know, for reporting it. So I think if we could just educate people that it is a crime and the sort of process to follow to report it, you know, screenshots, etc., always helpful. So just if we can have a push to kind of, you know, to share that information. But yeah, but just from my own feedback, I think it's important as well to have that follow up as well. And it was pleasing that Ann Overton did get back to me and said, you know, that things were progressing. That was, you know, very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Scott. I can tell you, I've never heard the police praised so much in any of my meetings in the 13 years I've been here. No, well done. Give credit when credit's due, I always say. Saith, you want to come back? Saith Rahman, Councillor.
Yes, can you hear me, Chair?
It's a bit quiet, but I think they can hear you. Yeah, go on.
Right, yeah, just quickly, could we possibly look at then with our police colleagues if we could undertake some, possibly a campaign using the comms team where we highlight the issue of inciting hatred on social media locally. I don't know if something in that line where we not educate people, but raise awareness of, you know, to be careful of what they post, what they share. I just think that may have some impact. But obviously, as Sean said, it's a worldwide issue. It's not going to be resolved overnight. But I think we need some direction from our police on how we deal with this. Because going back a few months back, I think I did share some of the posts that's Councillor Bamsey is referring to with our cabinet member Leanne, and you know, they are quite disturbing posts, to be honest. And some of the individuals who posted them, I personally know them, and I was quite taken back by some of their views on, you know, on certain things, you know, which I don't know. I think I don't quite know whether that's their inner belief or whether there's something that happened in their life and that they felt that they had to say this thing on social media. I just don't know. So some form of social media campaign, yeah, I'm saying social media, but some form of campaign possibly on social media where we raise an awareness of people to be careful of what they post and what they say, because there are implications.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Scythe. Chloe, I think if you want to say a few words, but I think we could look at that specifically as an item for a forward work programme. Chloe, have you got any comments? Is that something that that could?
Yeah, Chair, we could liaise with officers and come up with something, I'm sure. And we've got the forward work programme on the agenda for this meeting, so we'll go over specifics then, if that's okay, to feed into the forward work programme.
There we are. Thank you for that. Any other member got any questions on this final part of this presentation? Councillor Leanne Jones, please.
Yeah, it's just to say thank you really to the team this morning for giving that presentation. I know a few of them, it's their first time to Scrutiny, so it's and the ongoing work that they're doing since COVID and previous to that. I think, as you can see, this topic's been highlighted this morning: antisocial behaviour, substance misuse, hate crime, domestic abuse is very important to those communities surrounding us, and just want to thank the team really for their continued work. It is really much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you, Leanne. I was just about to do that as well. So I reiterate your comments on this. I had one final question just for Matthew. In relationship to substance misuse, I'm copying Claire now. I think I need to put my teeth back in. I work closely with Karen Jones, our new chief exec, prior to her appointment. And I'm well aware, again, I emphasise and I'll continue to emphasise how partnership working is key, always key. Now, I just want to drill down on your relationship with the health boards and all those in that sector, because I'm also aware when we are trying our best to bring people out of the drug habits where we know they need methadone, for instance, I am aware that there was an 8-month waiting list for this particular drug so that they could be served in the way they need to through professionals like yourself and those who are helping. Has that got any better? And if so, you know, what is the working relationship with bodies as big and bearing in mind, sorry, coronavirus, when everything seems to be focusing, it was Brexit before that, but now it's the coronavirus and the. So I just wonder, you know, slipping through the net, is this particular part of what your incredible work, as I said, I agree with everything Leanne said, but it's still a problem in well, not just Neath, but everywhere. So I think you get, I know Erica got her hand up, but I'll leave Matthew go first, Erica, and then I'll bring you in. Unless Matthew, you want Erica to come in, I leave it to you guys.
I leave Erica. Sorry, go on, Claire.
Chair, I will call on Erica to answer the detail about the waiting list, but to say that the Health Board is a member of the Area Planning Board. And along with other members of the Area Planning Board, we recognise that services do need to change, as I mentioned earlier. They're not as good as they should be or could be. And therefore, we're embarking on this major transformation project. We have commissioned some further services to get rapid access to prescription, particularly for our most vulnerable clients who may be homeless or were sleeping rough. So we have been able to respond to that. Obviously, the Area Planning Board is made up, as I said, of the Health Board, South Wales Police, Police and Crime Commissioner. So we're all partners in wanting to ensure that substance misuse services deliver as best as they can. I think Erica probably is in tune with the waiting list, but I do not believe it's in anywhere near that at the moment. I think it's reduced significantly, and I'm sure Erica can confirm that.
Erica, did you want to come in?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's good news for Neath Talbot, really. The Community Drug and Alcohol team, which provide prescribing to people in Neath Talbot, they don't have a waiting list at all. So there's no waiting list to access their service. And there hasn't been probably since before the pandemic. That there were issues last year, which result from staff absences within the team, but it's a fully staffed team now where there's no absences, and they're operating without a waiting list, so they can see people. There's a process that people need to go through to access prescribing, which can slow things down a bit, and that some people who perhaps need or would benefit from a prescribing intervention may not stick with it through that process to get that medication, and then they have to go back to the start again, which can slow things down for people, but that there certainly isn't a long wait to begin that process.
Thank you, Erica. Matthew, did you want to add anything?
It's just to add, during the pandemic, I think the partnership working has gone from strength to strength. I mainly kind of look at the operational level stuff and service delivery, and all I can comment is it's continued to grow, and our relationship with South Wales Police is growing day by day, and the Health Board staff day by day as well. So in the pandemic, that's given us an opportunity. I think with meetings going virtually, it's easier to get people in the room on the screen, and that's in the room for us decisions and progress things quite rapidly as well. So it is working well.
Thank you, Matthew. Leanne, before you went, you had your hand up. Did you want to come back up to Leanne Jones?
No, it was a legacy hand. Sorry, Chair.
Lovely. Claire's had a legacy hand.
No, Chair, I was just going to ask if we have your permission to leave after this item.
Yeah, very much so, of course. Let me just get this in then. I don't think there's no indication from any other member anyway. Can I just reiterate, as I said earlier, what Leanna said? And you've all done yourself proud. The presentation has been first class. So if that's your first time, you should be very proud of yourselves. You've given the right information. You've answered all the questions best of your ability. Obviously, there's some that we need to give to the police themselves. So very professional job. So thank you for your presentations. I will move on. As I said, you're free to go now, Claire, our new colleagues, and I will move on with our agenda. I only want to thank you all again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No worries. Ta-ra, Talbot.
Ta-ra.
Yeah. Right, members.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Betha. If we get back to our item now, work programme. Well, this programme is attached for information, as was the agenda items, and it's populated from the Scrutiny forward work programme that we had, from the workshop, sorry. So if you have any comments on the programme, I mean, Chloe touched on it earlier, and when Scythe brought in an item that he feels needs more looking at as online abuse and you know, all that he mentioned. So I don't know if members or Scythe, if you want to come back to ask for Chloe to or elaborate, and Chloe can help you to put something on the forward work programme for this committee. Do you want to come back, Scythe?
Jay, I think he put in the chat that he had to take a call.
Oh yes, I liked it. There we are. I could just see him on the screen. Apologies then. So
Chair, yeah, I wouldn't mind that.
What?
Yeah, if I can ask on Scythe's behalf, I think he was going to ask about putting online hate crime perhaps on the forward work programme. I think that could be a good topic to discuss sometime next year.
Yeah, members, happy to for Chloe to look at that and liaise with yourself and Scythe, because it was a little bit bigger that he related to, because Scythe was passionate about the social media. Oh, he's back now, I'll let him come in. But social media, he was really keen about. So yeah, we can't have it too open, if you know what I mean, too huge. But Chloe, again, a professional officer, she can help with it, setting it up. But Scythe, if you're back, I'll come back to you then. Go on. You're not here, are you? I thought I heard him, Chloe.
No, I haven't. I don't think he's come back.
All right. Somebody else talking, apology. I thought I heard Scythe. There we are. Anybody else got any information or anything they wish to discuss on the forward work programme at this stage? No?
Chair, if you can hear my voice,
only
just briefly, I welcome what's on the programme, and thank you, Chloe, for putting last time on, with the Chair's permission, to look at land which is flood areas, because as we move forward and the economy needs to really move forward with this committee, such an important committee, I think we need to address that, because in my humble opinion, it's me talking personally as a councillor, I think that the Welsh Government are overreacting as far as flood areas are concerned, and Neath Talbot has his fair share of that, and I think it's long-term stifling developments.
Yeah, I don't know if, well, Chloe, you come in on that then, Chloe, and then go on. Oh, wait a minute, Simon, let me bring Simon in. Simon Brennan, please. Yeah, go on.
The only slight concern with that, Chair, is that the maps come from NRW, and as with always with NRW, they tend to change every 6 months. So we'd be chasing a bit of a movable feast there, because they do change. And I think Councillor James is entirely right. Most of our borough seems to be coloured blue at the moment. I think it's the only ink they've got in their printer, so that's what they send through to us. So it is a bit disappointing, but I think we probably have to be a bit more specific, I guess, if we wanted to talk about different areas, because obviously it is a widespread problem with a lot of issues.
Yeah, I concur with those comments, Hugh. I think we had this discussion, and we are rolling out the LDP or updated it slightly, not rolling it out, changing, putting views in. And I think you brought it in previous meetings that if we can use, Simon's here now anyway, if we can use land that comes out of floodplains or land that we own, then projects can be looked at going forward in each of our wards. But I think there's an emphasis here on ourselves as councillors to identify, talk to Simon. I think this work can be done more so through individual councillors working with Simon and his team, rather than putting it. This was a community safety meeting so far today, really. But you are right. It's a regeneration forward work programme. So yes, but I don't know if specifically we'd have to have Kerry, we'd have to have all the officers in with the LDP, and as Simon has quite rightly said, it's changing. I'm aware of NRW taking land that I got that was in, and they've taken it out, which is good for me. But I really, NRW are a law unto themselves. I don't know how they work their maps, because nothing really ever changes, and yet it's in and out. It's like a yo-yo there. But Simon, I think you wanted to come back, did you?
I was just going to say, Chair, for individual sites, it can take us anything up to sort of 12 to 18 months to work through the flood consequence assessment work that we do for each site, and that can cost in the region of sort of £50,000 to £100,000 for that site. It is a difficult situation, and occasionally, I suppose, there is a feeling that some of the work that we do and we provide data to NRW, comes back to bite us later on because they use it against us to prove their point. But it is difficult because I know from a member point of view, people will say, well, I've lived in the area for 60 years and I've never seen that area flood. But their map is what it is. And for us to deviate from the map is very difficult.
Yeah. Hugh, I'm sure you could take those views on board. I come to you now, Chloe, take those views on board. And maybe we can still deal with, because it's a valid point, you know, to utilise land. But I think we could perhaps deal with it in a different way, but unless Chloe feels that it's something that you can address in the forward work programme. Over to you, Chloe.
In relation to the floodland, I spoke to Kerry after the Forward Work Programme workshop, and I circulated to members the information that Kerry and other relevant officers provided. So I don't know if you've seen that email with the information in, but I agree with with what you've said. Because the Forward Work Programme at the moment we've got to try and make sure that it is very specific and achievable, considering officers' time as well, and what the Scrutiny Committee can actually scrutinise and be updated on. The impact of COVID, like we've had today, from the community safety side of things. But obviously, as you can see from the Forward Work Programme, for the next meeting, we've got tourism on the active travel. And also there was, I think some of the members wanted to be updated on previous items that was on the Forward Work Programme before the pandemic. In relation to that, I just for officers, the purpose for officers, to have that a bit more specific. So if members could just tell me what specific reports you'd like to look at, so that I can get in contact with the relevant officers then and ask them what members would like to hear about, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chloe.
Yeah, thank you for that, Chloe. So you will see the items on there. If you drill down and get back to Chloe individually, and add anything, by all means, we'll have that discussion. I don't think we need to go through it here now, because we have got a pretty packed forward work programme. So I'm sure that we can tackle they're all important, but we have got to prioritise as well as a scrutiny committee, given the circumstances we conduct our meetings in, and officers' time, as you all know from other meetings, how difficult it is for officers at this moment in time. Is that all right, Hugh?
Oh, that's fine. And thank you too, Simon. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Anybody else got anything on that item now, before I move on to item 5? No? Well, item 5 was the Cabinet Forward Work Programme. Again, this has been added to the agenda, standard item. The Forward Work Programme falls with the Regeneration and Sustainable Development remit, and members would like to scrutinise a future meeting of the Scrutiny Committee. So that is a general item that we will deal with. I don't think, Chloe, there's anything on that for discussions or to put on today. It's self-explanatory, is that right?
Yeah, Chair, sorry, because the cabinet boards for the individual scrutiny committees haven't been stood up yet. We thought we'd give members the opportunity to see the cabinet forward work programme with all the items that go in there, and if members see anything on there that falls within this committee's remit that they would like to pull to scrutinise, we can look to put it onto the scrutiny forward work programme then. So if there's anything, just to let me know, you can email me anytime. And just flag it up. And it is a working document, so it does change quite regularly, so we just have to keep an eye out on that as well.
Oh, thank you for that, Chloe. All members happy with that? Yeah. Item 6 then I'll move on. Is any urgent items? There are none. And so before I close the meeting, I just want to say it's been a real good, productive meeting today. I think it was an important meeting because we put it on there. Members contributed well, and officers. So I thank you all for that. And I have noticed we haven't got another meeting now until the new year. So, and I know it's only the 4th of December, but I want to wish you all, on behalf of this committee, a very Merry Christmas, if you possibly can have one. And we certainly can have a better 2021, I'm sure, because we can't have nothing worse than 2020, can we?
No, you're right.
So thank you all for your time. I know how difficult it is, and have a lovely weekend. Thank you. Ta-ra.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye,
All the best.
everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.